Good evening, I'm Pinky Webb. Tonight we ask the questions, we tackle the issues, we clarify matters, and we get on point. The Senate President stands his ground on when the trial of Vice President Sara Duterte should begin amid calls to convene the impeachment court. Senate President Francis Escudero says no one can make that decision except the Senate and sees a trial after the State of the Nation address in July. But legal experts believe the court should be convened immediately. As legal minds fight over the interpretation of the law, some are suggesting the matter be brought to the High Court. Let's get on point with one of the framers of the 1987 Constitution, former Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Adolfo Azcuna. Justice Azcuna, good to see you again, Justice. Thank you so much for making time to come here.
Thank you, Pinky.
You're very much welcome. So, as mentioned a while ago, Justice Azcuna is one of the framers of the 1987 Constitution. Very important to talk about this because it is, I believe, Section 13, Article 11, Section 3, which is one of the points that is being hotly contested and subject to so many interpretations. So I'm going to start with that. It says the accountability of public officers. In case of the verified complaint or resolution of impeachment is filed by at least 1/3 of all members of the House, the same shall constitute the articles of impeachment. I don't think we have a problem with that, no, Justice?
Yeah, no problem.
No problem. Here's
So
the
far.
tricky part. And trial by the Senate shall forthwith proceed.
Yes.
What do you mean by this?
I think you should emphasize not so much the forthwith, but the proceed. What does proceed mean? Does it mean start the formal trial, witness taking? Not necessarily. It could mean all the steps that trial entails, including collection of evidence, forming the prosecutors, and convening the trial court itself by means of the oath or affirmation required by the same provision, Article 11, when sitting as an impeachment tribunal, the senators shall be on oath and affirmation. They already have an oath, this separate oath, because it is a separate activity, especially assigned to the Senate by the Constitution.
The sole authority of the Senate, hindi ho ba? But Justice, what does it mean? Okay, balikan po natin. Let's look back a little bit to what happened. February 5 was the last day for both the House and the Senate.
Yeah.
The House passed via fast track this impeachment against the Vice President. It was transmitted, it was brought rather physically by the Secretary General of the House to the Senate Secretary more or less around 5 p.m. Again on February 5, that's a Wednesday. So natanggap na po ni Secretary ng Senado. What should have happened after that? With regards to this, and trial by the Senate shall forthwith proceed.
Yes.
What should they have done? Should they have taken it up in plenary at 5 p.m. or was that okay that they didn't take it up? Did the Senate Secretary have to verify first and foremost his articles of impeachment?
Okay, what I believe should have been done was for the Senate President to receive the filed articles in his capacity now as presiding officer of the court. And that is, he has to take an oath. Mauna na siya, because they're required to take an oath anyway. So he should now act as a presiding officer of the Senate as an impeachment tribunal by taking his oath. And he can declare that the articles have been filed with us. We will inform the House of such a fact and require the House to name their prosecutors. Those are part of proceeding to trial.
That's right.
That
But
can be done forthwith.
why is it important for the Senate President to have taken his oath? What does that signal, sir?
That signals that he is now acting no longer as a lawmaker, but as a judge in an impeachment tribunal.
Isn't there supposed to be a process that they're supposed to follow Justice, please correct me if I'm wrong, such as
Yes.
verify first the articles of impeachment. They said that kailangan po tingnan kung may wet signatures at e-signatures. Apparently, e-signatures are not supposed to be allowed. Would that be true?
That depends on the rules. They can adopt rules to govern the impeachment process.
Okay.
And if because it says verified under oath yan eh. So it cannot be verified through digital.
Opo, that's why.
Yeah.
So tama po, kailangan po silang manumpa
Oo,
kay
under oath.
SecGen at
Wait, yeah.
isulat po yung kanilang pangalan. Isn't that supposed to happen first to verify? The Senate Secretary should verify it first, the signatures, and then tsaka lang po siguro manumpa si Senate President Cheese as presiding officer?
Pwede rin. That can be done by the staff. But what I mean is the presiding officer should declare that the matter has been assessed. That's called assessment. That the complaint has been assessed and found in order. And therefore, I declare that we have received and that it has been filed, duly filed. And we inform the House and ask the House to name their prosecutors.
Even if the House already named their prosecutors, the 11.
Yes, because that is not yet received by the tribunal.
When they
The
form the
tribunal
11
has to receive
prosecutors. I see.
the prosecutor's name.
How important is that? What would be the possible technicalities, let's say, Justice, if the Senate President did not declare that the Senate has received the articles of
Okay.
impeachment, etc. Yun pong sinabi niyong process. What if the Senate President does not do that in the 19th Congress, for example?
Okay. That would mean that the jurisdiction of the tribunal has not yet attached, in my view, because the tribunal has not been convened and the presiding officer has not taken his oath. So there is still a need for the jurisdiction to attach. And if the jurisdiction has not attached by the time the new Congress comes in and the old Congress passes out, the House of Representatives goes out of existence. It's not a continuing body. So the officers, the members of the House who signed, verified under oath the articles of impeachment would no longer be in office.
But what if they were re-elected in the
They will
20th
be elected
Congress?
under a new mandate. So there may be a need for them to refile or reconfirm their signatures. That's the problem. In which case, that would constitute another impeachment which is prohibited within 1 year.
Yes, I was actually going to go
Yeah,
there. You
yun
said,
yun ang problema.
sabi niyo po kasi refile. Refile is impossible because that will go against the Constitution on that one-year ban.
yes.
But what about reconfirm? That's a possibility.
That's a possibility, but that can be interpreted as a new initiation of a new impeachment
But
complaint.
here's the thing, Justice. Is the Constitution silent on this?
It is.
What you're telling us right
Yeah,
now?
it is silent on the mechanics. That's why it says that the Congress should adopt rules to make this section effective. And they did. There are rules, but apparently there are gaps in the rules and they need to fill those gaps. Yeah. In the U.S., for instance, Pinky, the rules of the Senate, which also tries and decides impeachment cases, very clearly says that trials start at 1 p.m. of the day after they receive the articles.
Sa atin po, hindi
very,
ganun
very clear in the
Opo.
rules.
That's why I was actually asking the Justice prior to us going on air, kung nagkulang ho ba kayo dito sa Article 11, Section 3 on impeachment? Because, again, when you say, and trial by the Senate shall forthwith proceed, it's subject to different types of interpretation. One would say, shall, kailangan. Forthwith, immediately.
Yes.
Kailangan ngayon na, pwedeng ganon. Yung iba naman, sasabihin, iba naman ang kanilang pananaw sa shall forthwith, sir.
yes.
So, does this need to be cleared up? Should this part be revised?
Magandang katanungan yan, Pinky. Una-una, the last section or subsection of Section 3 says that Congress shall adopt rules to make this section effective. Okay, so it is also a possibility on the part of Congress to define now what forthwith means. So
They should do it already.
they should do that. They can do that because hindi naman very specific yung forthwith. So it's open-ended. They can say 3 months. They can say at the next SONA. Yan ang one possibility. The other is, as I said, is calculated. Yan, it's a calculated, open textured word so that it can address differing situations. For instance, ay situation ngayon ay merong eleksyon
Yeah.
Magkakampanya yung mga senador. Now, election is also a form of accountability. Now, Article 11 on impeachment is on accountability of public officers. So pareho yan, accountability. So you have to balance the importance of both. So it is possible that this can be a reasonable delay because the elections is just as important as holding the impeachment proceedings right away. And this is what we call a guardrail. Election is a guardrail of democracy. It involves more than one person. And so I do not blame the Senate President for delaying it until after the elections.
I see. So, a reasonable solution to give clarity to this, you're saying, Justice, is to adopt rules already that are clear.
Yes.
Once, actually two things, Justice. Once the impeachment complaint is filed and endorsed in the House, di ba dinadala po kay SecGen yan ng House?
Yes.
When should the SecGen forward this to the Speaker? Because that was also a bone of contention when it was stuck with the Secretary General. And henceforth also, ito po, yung pag sinabing proceed forthwith, pwede pong sabihin nila, it could mean 2 weeks or it could mean 2 months, depending if there is an election coming up. Ganun po. I mean, certainly they see the scenarios right now and how it needs to be addressed.
Yes, they can provide different scenarios in the rules. The rules can be more specific. The Constitution doesn't have to do that. They just have to authorize them to adopt rules, as long as it's not inconsistent with the provisions of the Constitution.
And can rules by any house, both houses of Congress, if they enact, they have rules already, can these be changed
Yes.
anytime there is a new Congress?
Yes, anytime,
But what if it's changed to suit their narrative,
Convenience.
convenience, political standing, etc.?
Yes, it's all right. Yes, as long as it's not consistent. And it says the purpose of the rules is so that the provisions of the article are effectively carried out.
Okay. But being one of the framers of the 1987 Constitution, and if you were to tell us, ano ho ba sa Tagalog ang ibig sabihin ng trial by the Senate shall forthwith proceed? Ibig ho ba sabihin nun, kailangan kaagad-agad na?
Yes. Meron tayong Filipino version, official version of the Saligang Batas. Tinignan ko yun, anong linagay doon sa section? Sabi, agad. Umpisahan ang paglilitis. Agad. Yun ang So,
okay, so now that...
Yun talaga ang intensyon.
Okay, so yun po ang intention. So now that the Senate President, because there is a midterm election, and because many factors that have come to play, for example, natanggap po nila ito February 5, natanggap po nila last day ng kanilang session prior to going to recess, no? And the Senate President saying, kailangan pa pong i-verify ni Secretary of the Senate yung articles of impeachment, kailangan pa pong tingnan yung mga wet signatures, kailangan din pong i-update ang kanilang rules.
Yes.
With all those happening, Justice, kailangan ho bang ginagawa na yun ngayon as we speak?
Dapat, because that's part of the preparation for the trial. So, dapat ginagawa na ngayon. Mas maganda, mas maliwanag kung makikita natin na ginagawa yon by the Senate as already an impeachment tribunal. In the Supreme Court, for instance, a case is filed. That doesn't mean that it's docketed. It has to be examined first whether it complies with all the rules. sometimes they accept it. They give it a number, but it's a UDK number.
What
does
is
it
that?
mean? Undocketed.
I see. Okay.
It has a number, but it's not docketed yet because maybe they have not paid the fees and all that. The moment everything is okay, then they docket it. Then they give you a docket number. So
And then
there
it
are
becomes
two-
official.
official.
Ganun ho ba yun?
Then it's really filed. Because if it's filed but not docketed, hindi pa talaga filed.
And your perception, sir, is that hindi pa po docketed, kumbaga, itong impeachment, articles of impeachment, because you said the Senate President has not directly said that the Senate is taking cognizance, etc., of this impeachment, articles of impeachment. At dalawa ho ba yun, to declare it and manumpa po siya? Are those the necessary requirements, you think, for it to be under their jurisdiction?
Okay, I don't think it's required. The docketing is required by the Constitution. It's just the filing. But the Senate President should officially declare, not in a press release. There has to be some form of official statement from the Senate President that it has been filed. Perhaps not necessarily as a Senate presiding officer of the tribunal, but as Senate President, there should be an official statement on his part that it has been filed, it has been assessed, it's in compliance with the requirements of Constitution, and therefore trial shall proceed.
Forthwith.
And then she can schedule it.
Yeah.
Oh,
And he has to do this itong 19th Congress because you're saying that if pag tumawid po
Oh.
to sa 20th Congress, this might pose a problem.
baka the articles will lapse already.
I see. All right. We're going to take a very short break. We'll have more of our discussion with Justice Adolfo Azcuna. After the break, please stay tuned. Welcome back. You're still watching On Point. Still with us, former Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Adolfo Azcuna. In line with what we've been talking about, there was a statement made by Senate President Chisa Escudero. For those who just joined us now, Justice Azcuna is saying that the Senate President should formally declare, basically, that the Senate has received the articles of impeachment. Let's listen to what the Senate President said.
Meron ng jurisdiction ang Senado dyan sa kasong yan dahil tinanggap na namin eh. Mag-convene man o hindi yung korte to receive evidence, mag-i-issue na ng mga jurisdictional orders ang impeachment court na ito. Kaugnay ng pagpapasagot, na pag-usapan na natin yan, pagpapasagot sa nasasakdal at paghingi ng tugon doon ng prosecution naman.
Let me underscore that. Mayroon ng jurisdiction ang Senado dyan sa kasong yan dahil tinanggap na namin eh. Is that acceptable to someone like you?
Yun ang problema, Pinky, dahil press release lang yan. Where is the mace? He should say that with the mace, holding the mace, so that it's an official statement of the Senate President.
I see.
Yun ang ano eh.
Okay.
Pag walang mace yan, walang official nature of the activity.
Declaration.
Kaya importante, kung minsan tinatago yung mace para nating official can happen.
Yeah.
Yun
Pag
lang.
tinanggal ang mace sa...
Yun lang ang kulang, yung mace.
All right. Let's talk about the process. If they start June 2, for example, maybe some of the pre-trial, baka pwede na po nilang umpisahan. We'll see what happens, Justice. Starting it after the President's State of the Nation address, would that be an appropriate time or would that be unjust delay for you?
That will be on July 21. By that time, the new Congress shall have come in, and the old lower house, the House of Representatives, will have lapsed out of existence, it not being a continuing body. And therefore, there is a possibility that the Supreme Court might rule. I'm not saying that this will happen. Supreme Court might rule that the articles of impeachment signed by people who are no longer in office or no longer hold the same mandate when they signed it is no longer valid. And therefore, there should be a new verified complaint signed by the incumbent representatives of the people in order for the trial to proceed. In which case, again, bawal. They have to wait 2026.
Yeah. because no impeachment case can be filed more than once in a period
Yes.
of 1 year. So let's assume, sir, that they have taken jurisdiction. There was a declaration, and maybe a trial might begin, or the pre-trial. What about if the pre-trial has begun?
Yeah, pre-trial is possible under rules to be adopted by the Senate as part of the preliminary steps towards the trial. As I said, the other word that we should look into is proceed.
Opo.
Proceed means that can include pre-trial because that is the path towards trial proper. So, pwede yun.
Pwede.
Yeah.
Justice, what about the process? If there are 7 articles of impeachment that was filed, does it have to be taken up as filed? For example, sir, they start with Article 1 and then Article 2 and so on and so forth? Or can the panel of prosecutors choose which article they can begin with?
It's up to the court, really. The court can direct the prosecutors. It's the court that controls it. To start with the first offense, the first ground, or with the last ground, or the middle ground. It's up to the court.
But only one article of
At a time.
impeachment needs to be convicted. The Vice President only has to be convicted even in just one article
Yes.
to be
One is
removed from-
sufficient for
one is
removal.
sufficient. Okay.
If you get enough votes.
What happens to the Senate President becomes the presiding officer?
Yes.
Ang ibig sabihin ng presiding officer, parang siya ho yung judge, hindi ho ba?
Siya ang Chief Justice.
Siya ang Chief Justice.
Yeah.
Okay. Siya yun. Tapos meron pong 23 that will be sitting as
Yes,
senator judges.
23.
And you need 16
Yes.
to convict, right?
Yes.
And obviously that will include the presiding officer.
Including, he can vote.
He can, or
He can.
is he mandated to vote?
Yes, he is mandated to vote. Or no, he can abstain, but he has the right to vote. He is not required to vote.
What about the Vice President? Is she required to be present?
Again, depends on the rules. Normally, in a criminal case, not required. So, unless he's subpoenaed to testify. But normally, it's not required to be present.
Okay. What about a special session? There is also this suggestion for the President to call a special session so they can convene. The Senate possibly can convene and proceed with maybe a pretrial or the impeachment court. Is that legal? Is that within the bounds of the law?
Yes, that is on the premise that there is a need for the senators to be in session for them to tackle the impeachment, which I do not agree with. No, but that can be done also. It's even clearer because they will really be in session, and therefore they can convene as a impeachment tribunal.
But isn't it true, Justice, that for the President to call a special session, it can only cover legislative agenda?
Yes, he can put some proposed bills, and once they are in session to tackle those bills, they can convene as a tribunal.
Impeachment court?
Yeah.
I see. Pwede po yun.
Pwede yun.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong. Justice Carpio suggests that.
Okay. What if the Vice President resigns? Because there are two issues here.
Yeah.
If she's convicted, she is removed from office, and meron pong perpetual disqualification from office.
Yes.
There are some people saying that if she resigns, matatanggal po yung provision na, kasi inunahan niya po yung perpetual disqualification from public office. What does the law say about this?
That's an open question, Pinky. In the United States, there have been instances where the person being impeached resigned, but the tribunal continued on the other issue of disqualification. That has been done. The only thing is that in the U.S., the voting on the removal and the voting on the disqualification are separate. They vote separately. And for disqualification, a majority vote only suffices. So iba ang provision doon. Dito sa atin, ang main purpose really of the impeachment is removal. And in case there is no removal, I don't think you can have disqualification. Parang it is a consequence or it is a necessary accompaniment of the removal. So,
But if she chooses to remove herself,
kaya nga, it's already removed. She cannot be removed by impeachment.
Yeah.
Or,
what happens to the perpetual disqualification?
yeah. In my view, she cannot be disqualified because the nature of impeachment is remedial, not punitive. It's not punitive. So the remedy is already there. She's removed. She's out already. So there is no longer a basis to proceed with the impeachment on the disqualification. Note that the provision says that it shall not go, judgment in impeachment cases shall not go beyond removal from office and disqualification from public office, and not or. So it has to be both.
I see.
Yeah.
But this can be questioned before the Supreme Court, and then once the
for the
Supreme
Supreme
Court
Court.
justices have a decision on this, that becomes part of the law of the land jurisprudence.
Yes, they're not in the Philippines, right? In abroad, as I said, there have been decisions allowing disqualification issue to remain even after removal. Yes.
And maybe as a last question, even the question on how we started this interview on Article 11, Section 3 of the Constitution, shall proceed, shall forthwith proceed.
Yes.
Can this is it also possible? You think that this could be questioned before the Supreme Court? Because they say that you can only question. You can go to the Supreme Court because there is a violation in the Constitution.
Yes.
So this can be used as a possible violation of the Constitution because some people who want the impeachment to proceed will say, nakasulat naman kasi sa sa Constitution,
Forthwith.
shall forthwith proceed. Is that a possibility, you think, that the Supreme
It
Court
depends, Pinky, on the nature of the petition. If it is mandamus, which is a petition to compel, in this case, the Senate, to start already the trial, the Supreme Court will probably deny the mandamus because they are reluctant to order a co-equal body
Right.
to do anything.
separation of powers?
But if it's what we call declaratory relief, which is just to declare what are the rights of parties under the situation, it is possible that the Supreme Court might declare that the situation is such that the Senate should already start.
Wow. Okay.
And let's say the Vice President is the one asking for declaratory relief. Supreme Court has said you have the right to be tried immediately. It's possible, but it's not binding on the Senate, but it is a moral pressure on the part of the Senate because that's a decision of the Supreme Court.
Okay, that's coming from a former member of the Supreme Court to file a declaratory relief, if ever. Justice Adolfo Azcuna, what a pleasure to have you, sir,
Thank you.
here in the
Yeah.
studio. Maraming salamat po sa inyong oras. Take care of yourself.
Walang anuman, salamat din.
Thank
Bob,
you, sir.
Pinky.
That's On Point. Join us again tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel. I'm Pinky Webb. Thank you for watching.